All right, buckle up, history fans. Today, we're taking a deep dive into British history with British History for Dummies as our guide.
Yeah,
Whether you're prepping for a pub quiz
right.
or just fascinated by all things British,
Yeah.
we're going to uncover some fascinating facts about this island nation.
It's a history that's a lot more diverse than people might realize.
Oh, really?
We're talking Celts, Romans, Saxons, Vikings.
Wow.
It's like a melting pot of European cultures.
Okay, so not just all about kings and queens then.
Not even close. In fact, even the name,
Okay.
the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland, kind of hint at that layered history, right?
Yay.
And look at the royal family. Normans, Plantagenets, Tudors,
Oh, yeah.
Stuarts, Hanoverians.
Yeah.
You've got French, German, Scottish ancestry in there.
Wow.
It's like a who's who of European dynasties.
It's a real family reunion.
Yeah.
But even before all those royals, Britain had a whole prehistoric scene going on, right? The book talks about Neanderthals and their surprisingly sophisticated tools.
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Yeah.
They weren't just, grunting cavemen.
Right.
They were making complex tools, had bigger brains than us,
Wow.
and even bury their dead, which is interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Some people think that could be a sign of early spiritual beliefs.
So is that where we Brits get our DIY obsession from? I'm just kidding. But we didn't actually evolve from Neanderthals, though.
Right, that's right. Modern humans are more closely linked to the Cro-Magnons,
Okay.
and there's even a fascinating fact about a DNA match
Why?
between Cro-Magnon remains and a history teacher in southwest England.
No way.
It shows how connected we are to these
Aw.
ancient people.
That's incredible. And then came the Neolithic Revolution, when people started farming.
Yeah.
The book says that even impacted religion, so I'm guessing it wasn't all cathedrals and stained glass windows yet.
More like sun worship, rituals for rain,
Oh,
and probably a lot of appeasement to the ever unpredictable British weather.
that makes sense. Speaking of ancient rituals, Stonehenge. Everyone knows it,
Yeah.
but nobody seems to know why it was built.
Right, exactly. The
Very theory.
Beaker people from the Bronze Age, they are clearly ambitious. I mean,
Mhm.
can you imagine
Yeah.
hauling those massive stones without modern tools?
Yeah, it's hard to fathom.
There are a lot of theories, but the true purpose of Stonehenge is still a mystery.
It really makes you wonder what was so important back then that it required such a, monumental effort.
Right.
Okay, so we've gone from sophisticated Neanderthals to sun-worshipping farmers
Yeah.
to Stonehenge's, enigmatic builders.
Right.
What's next on this historical road trip?
Well, next we enter the Iron Age, where the Britons really made their mark.
Okay.
They were masters of ironworking, building these impressive hill forts like Maiden Castle.
Wait, so were all Britons Celts?
Ah, that's a common misconception. The spread of Celtic culture was very influential, but not all Britons fully adopted it.
Oh,
It's like saying everyone who enjoys pizza is Italian.
that's a good point. And these Iron Age Britons, they definitely had their own unique style, like their use of woad, that blue dye.
Oh, yeah.
Wasn't that supposed to, freak out the Romans?
Imagine Julius Caesar's men, right, marching in expecting a fight,
Right.
and then they're faced with these warriors covered head to toe in blue paint.
Oh, wow.
Pretty intimidating, I'd say.
I bet. The book talks about how massive these hill forts were, like Maiden Castle.
Oh, yeah.
Can you picture the effort it took to build something like that
It's incredible.
back then? It must have been a society with some serious organization,
Absolutely. And within these societies, you had the Druids,
Oh,
these incredibly influential figures
yeah.
who acted as advisors, judges, and even,
Well,
if you believe the Roman accounts, practitioners of human sacrifice.
Whoa, human sacrifice.
It's pretty dark, but the bog bodies found across Britain
Right.
suggest that it wasn't just a myth.
Oh, wow.
They show evidence of ritualistic killings, sometimes even a
Oh my
scalpel
goodness.
killing, just to make sure.
Okay. That's a bit grim. But it definitely adds to the mystique of the Druids.
Right.
So we've got this picture of Iron Age Britain, hilltop cities, blue warriors,
Yeah.
and powerful druids kind of presiding over it all. But then everything changed when the Romans decided to pay a visit, huh?
That's right. The Romans, led by Claudius,
Okay.
an emperor who was pretty eager to prove himself.
Yeah.
They saw Britain as an opportunity to really show off their military might.
So they were just, looking to conquer.
In a way, yeah. They wanted to expand their empire, and Claudius needed a military victory
Right.
to solidify his position,
Makes sense. But if they were so powerful, why were there no Roman aqueducts in Britain? You'd think that would be like a priority. Yeah.
It's a good question. It seems that even the mighty Romans adapted their approach based on, the specific location.
Oh, okay.
They did have advanced water systems here.
Right.
Just not the iconic aqueducts that we often picture,
Yeah, the ones with all the arches.
Exactly.
So even the Romans had to adjust their plans for Britain. It seems like this island has always had a way of shaping the cultures that land here.
Absolutely. And that trend definitely continues
Okay.
as we move into the post-Roman period. With the Romans gone, Britain saw this influx of different groups,
Okay.
each vying for power and influence. It's this mix of cultures and conflicts that sets the stage for the next chapter in British history.
It sounds like things are about to get even more interesting.
Oh, yeah. So last time we left off with Britain kind of on the brink of becoming this global empire.
Right.
But before we get there, let's talk about these early English monarchs who were actually, well, pretty French.
Wait, really? So they were basically ruling a country that they didn't even, identify with?
Yeah, exactly. They spoke French. Their culture was French.
Oh, wow.
Even their priorities were more focused on, continental affairs rather than England itself.
So it's almost like the whole concept of Englishness was still being, figured out at that point.
Yeah, you could say that.
Okay, so how did the English people feel about being ruled by these Frenchified kings?
Not everyone was thrilled, to put it mildly.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And one of the most dramatic examples of this kind of clash was the conflict between Henry II and Thomas Becket, the Archbishop of Canterbury.
Oh, Becket. I remember learning about him in school.
Yeah.
Didn't he get murdered?
Yeah, a very dramatic end, to say the least.
Yeah.
It was really a power struggle.
Okay.
Henry wanted to assert royal authority over the church, but Becket, upholding the church's power, he refused to back down.
Wow.
And it ended, well, tragically, with Becket's assassination in Canterbury Cathedral.
Talk about a king who didn't take no for an answer, huh? Okay, so after Henry II, things calmed down a bit.
Well, not quite. Henry's son, Richard the Lionheart, was he was more interested in crusading than actually ruling England.
Oh, so he was kind of like an absentee king?
Pretty much. He spent most of his reign fighting in the Holy Land, leaving England to be governed by, by others.
So basically he was like, England, you're on your own. I've got bigger battles to fight.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of absentee leadership created opportunities for others to try to grab power.
Okay.
Which brings us to Richard's brother, King John.
Right.
You might know him as the villain from those Robin Hood stories.
Oh, yeah. Prince John, always scheming and trying to, steal the throne.
Well, in reality, John did inherit the throne.
Okay.
But his reign was far from successful, He lost control of English lands in France.
Oh, wow.
He feuded with the church.
Okay.
And he faced a major rebellion.
The full-on rebellion.
Yeah, by his own barons.
So not quite as charming as the Disney version, huh?
Not exactly.
Yeah.
And it was actually this clash with the barons that led to one of the most famous documents in English history.
Magna Carta.
Magna Carta. I remember that from history class.
Yeah.
Something about limiting the king's power. Right.
Exactly. The barons forced John to sign this charter.
Right.
Which basically set limits on royal authority.
Okay.
And established some really key legal principles that still resonate today. It was a landmark moment in the development of English law and constitutional government.
So even though King John was, kind of a mess, he accidentally helped lay the groundwork for some pretty important stuff.
Yeah, that's the irony of history, right? Sometimes even the most tumultuous reigns can have these lasting consequences.
Okay.
And speaking of tumultuous, the medieval period was also a time of, just constant conflict.
Between England, Scotland, and Wales.
Always fighting over who gets to wear the crown, huh? I guess some things never change.
Right, exactly.
But besides those royal squabbles, what else was going on in medieval Britain?
Well, picture this. A society already struggling with, these power struggles.
Right.
And then suddenly, bam, the Black Death hits.
Oh, right. The plagues.
Yeah, this devastating plague that just swept across Europe, killing millions.
It's hard to even imagine what that must have been like.
It was truly horrific. People were dying, left and right.
Right.
Villages were abandoned.
Oh, wow.
And the whole social order was just completely shaken.
It's a stark reminder of how fragile, human societies can be in the face of those events.
Absolutely.
Okay, so medieval Britain, constant warfare, power struggles, and then a deadly plague on top of it all.
Right.
Doesn't sound like a great time to be alive. What happened next?
Yeah.
Did things ever start to look up?
Well, as we move into the later medieval period, we see the beginnings of this major religious shift.
Okay.
The Reformation.
Right, the Reformation.
Across Europe, people started questioning the authority of the Catholic Church.
Right.
And in England, this led to a pretty dramatic break from Rome.
Henry VIII and his 6 wives? Wasn't that all about, him wanting a divorce?
Well, yeah, but it was much more than just a personal matter.
Okay.
Henry used this opportunity to assert his own authority.
Okay.
And declared himself the head of the Church of England.
Wow. So no more pope for him.
Exactly. It was a huge turning point.
Yeah.
Leading to, religious upheaval, power struggles, and ultimately the establishment of a new Protestant church in England.
Wow. So Henry's desire for a divorce basically turned English religion upside down?
You could say that. And the consequences of this religious split played out very dramatically during the reigns of his children, Mary Elizabeth and Mary Queen of Scots.
Right.
It was a time of religious persecution, political intrigue, executions, you name it.
Wow, it was like a real-life soap opera playing out.
Yeah, with religion and power right at the heart of it all.
Yeah, that's some high-stakes drama for sure. And amidst all this religious turmoil, there was also this cultural rebirth happening, right?
The Renaissance.
Exactly, the Renaissance. It's a period of renewed interest in classical learning, art, and literature. It just swept across Europe. And in England, this creative energy found its greatest expression, I think, in the works of William Shakespeare.
Shakespeare. I actually enjoy his plays.
Yeah, right.
Even though they're, a few centuries old.
His plays are timeless. They offer this window into Elizabethan society, exploring those universal themes, love, ambition, betrayal, just the complexities of human nature, as relevant today, right?
As they were back then.
It's amazing how someone writing over 400 years ago can still speak to us so powerfully.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
So, but all good things must come to an end, right?
Right.
What happened after the Elizabethan era?
Well, a new dynasty took the throne.
The
Stuarts.
The Stuarts, right?
And their reign was marked by growing tension between the monarchy and Parliament, ultimately culminating in the English Civil War.
Wait, a civil war?
Yeah.
That sounds pretty intense. What was that all about?
It was a clash of ideologies, really, and a power struggle. The Stuart kings, they believed in this divine right of monarchs, while Parliament wanted to limit royal power. And assert their own authority.
So they were kind of butting heads.
Yeah, exactly. It was this brutal conflict.
Wow.
That divided the nation.
Oh, wow.
And ultimately led to the execution of King Charles I.
They actually executed the king.
Yeah, it was a pretty radical act.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And it sent shockwaves across Europe. The English Civil War really marked a turning point in British history.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Shifting that balance of power and paving the way for a more constitutional monarchy.
So from French-speaking monarchs to plague outbreaks, religious upheaval, even a civil war, it seems like Britain just never had a dull moment.
No, definitely not a dull moment.
But where does this roller coaster of history take us next?
Well, from the ashes of that civil war, a new Britain emerges. Ambitious, outward-looking, and poised to become that global empire we were talking about. But that, my friend, is a story for another time.
Okay, so last time we left off with Britain kind of poised to become this global empire.
Right.
Yeah. It's hard to imagine how this tiny island nation managed to, rule over such a huge chunk of the world.
It is a remarkable story.
Yeah.
And one that's, full of contradictions. On the one hand, you have this incredible expansion of British power and influence. Colonies established in North America, India, Australia, Africa. It's really mind-boggling when you think about it.
It's like they were playing a real-life game of Risk and just kept winning.
Exactly.
But there's obviously a darker side to the story, too.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, colonialism wasn't exactly a picnic for the people being colonized.
British Empire was, built on exploitation.
Right.
Often brutal and inhumane.
Yeah.
The legacy of slavery, the oppression of indigenous populations, the economic drain on resources. It's a dark chapter that we can't ignore.
Yeah, it's important to acknowledge those complexities. But back on the home front, Britain was going through its own pretty dramatic transformation, the Industrial Revolution. Wasn't that kind of a game changer?
So absolutely. Think of it as a technological earthquake.
Okay.
The invention of things like the steam engine, the power loom. It completely changed the way goods were produced.
Right.
Factories sprang up, cities grew exponentially.
Okay.
A whole new working class emerged.
It's hard to even imagine life before all those innovations. No cars, no electricity, no internet. It sounds almost prehistoric.
It was a period of incredible change.
Yeah.
And not all of it was positive, of course.
Right.
The Industrial Revolution also brought about new social problems.
Yeah.
Pollution, poverty, child labor.
So a lot like today, in a way.
Yeah, you could say that.
But this was also when we get the iconic Victorian era.
Yeah.
Queen Victoria, fancy dresses.
Right.
That whole stiff upper lip attitude.
Yeah. It's an era that continues to fascinate people.
Yeah.
They're for good reason.
Yeah.
The Victorian era was full of contradictions.
Okay.
On the one hand, you had this, incredible expansion of knowledge technology, but also this very strict social code and a rigid class system.
It sounds like they were trying to hold on to tradition while, the world around them was changing so rapidly.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
But even the Victorians couldn't escape the turmoil of the 20th century, right?
Yeah, and unfortunately not. The 20th century was a real roller coaster for Britain.
Oh, okay.
2 world wars, the decline of the empire, the rise of the welfare state.
Okay.
It was a time of immense challenges and transformations.
Yeah, let's talk about World War I.
Okay.
The book really highlights how brutal trench warfare was.
Oh, yeah.
It's hard to even grasp the scale of the casualties. The Battle of the Somme alone, over 60,000 British casualties in a single day.
It's a staggering number.
Yeah.
And it really speaks to the horrors of, modern warfare.
Right.
It wasn't just the physical toll, but the psychological impact on those who survived what we now call PTSD.
Right.
It really changed the way people viewed war forever.
And back home, the war also changed the role of women in society.
Oh, absolutely. With the men away fighting.
Right.
Women had to step into jobs that were traditionally seen as, men's work.
Right.
And that had a lasting impact on the fight for women's suffrage and equality.
So even amidst the tragedy of war, there were these, seeds of social progress being sown.
Yeah, you could say that.
But then, just a few decades later, another world war.
Right.
How did Britain cope with that?
World War II was another, defining moment for Britain. Under Winston Churchill's leadership, the country stood defiant against Nazi Germany, even during the Blitz when London was bombed relentlessly.
That keep calm and carry on spirit really seems to be ingrained in the, the British psyche.
It really does. It's a testament to the resilience of the British people.
Yeah.
But the war also had a profound impact on the British Empire.
Okay.
After 2 devastating global conflicts, Britain was simply no longer able to maintain its vast colonial holdings.
So the end of World War II also marked the beginning of the end for the British Empire.
In many ways, yes. India gained independence in 1947. And over the following decades, other colonies followed suit. Britain had to adjust to a new role in the world, one where it was no longer this dominant superpower.
Yeah, it must have been a difficult transition. But back home, Britain was also dealing with the aftermath of war and trying to build, a fairer society. The book mentions the rise of the welfare state. Was that, a big deal?
It was a huge shift.
Okay.
The welfare state was based on this idea that everyone should have access to basic necessities, healthcare, education, Social Security, regardless of their income.
Okay.
It was a massive step towards creating a more equitable society.
It sounds like a completely different way of thinking compared to, the Victorian era.
Right, exactly.
But with the empire gone and this, new social order emerging, Britain's place in the world was still kind of up for grabs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that uncertainty led to one of the biggest debates in British history, whether or not to join the European Economic Community, the forerunner to the European Union.
Yeah, I remember learning about that debate. It seemed like the whole country was divided.
Yeah, it was a decision with huge implications. On the one hand, you know, joining the EEC meant closer ties with Europe, potential economic benefits. But on the other hand, it meant giving up some sovereignty, and potentially, diluting British identity.
So it was a really tough call.
Yeah, and one that continues to have repercussions even today.
So even in the late 20th century, Britain was still, trying to figure out its place in the world. It seems like this island nation has always been at the crossroads of history.
Absolutely. From the Roman invasion to the rise and fall of the British Empire, Britain has always been shaped by these external forces, while also leaving its own unique mark on the world. It's a fascinating story of resilience, adaptation, and this constant evolution.
It really is. So what does all of this mean for Britain today? After all this history, where does the country go from here?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Britain is still grappling with its identity in this post-Brexit world, navigating economic challenges, and trying to find its place in a rapidly changing global landscape. But one thing's for sure.
What's that?
This island nation has a knack for reinvention. And I have no doubt that it will continue to, surprise and fascinate us in the years to come.
Well, I'm certainly not a dummy about British history anymore. Thanks to British History for Dummies and your insightful commentary, I feel like I've got a much better grasp on this amazing journey. And for our listeners out there, I encourage you to, dive deeper into the periods that pique your interest. Who knows, maybe you'll discover some fascinating fact that even our expert missed.
That's the beauty of history. There's always something new to learn, another perspective to uncover, another story waiting to be told. So keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.
Well said. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into British history.
Thanks for having me.